I'm a single female who lives alone in a one-bedroom apartment. I live on the first floor and moved in right around a year ago. This story takes place on Valentine's Day last year. My new apartment is in a large, new building, and I have a unit on the first floor. After living there for about a week or two, it was Valentine's Day. I got up that morning to go to work and was planning to leave at 7 a.m. When I opened my door to leave my apartment, I saw that there was a heart-shaped Valentine taped to it. When I saw it, I thought it was something left by the apartment management. They had left me a welcome gift with some small items, and my previous apartment would do that sort of stuff too. I didn't even read it and just put it on my countertop to look at when I got home from work. When I got home that day, I finally read the Valentine, and I quickly realized it was not left by management. It had my name on it, and it was handwritten. Inside, it said that I was possibly the most beautiful girl in the entire apartment complex. The person then said they hoped we could spend the next Valentine's Day together. I was really creeped out by this. The way it was written was so weird, and I didn't know anybody there yet at all. I had barely spoken to anybody in the hallways, so obviously, I had no idea who did this. But clearly, somebody had been watching me. Mere hours later, I was in my kitchen and starting to cook. My kitchen is at the front of my apartment, right by the door. When I'm at the counter, I face the rest of my apartment, which is the living room and then the patio door at the other end. It was probably about 7 p.m. and dark outside. As I was standing at the counter, I suddenly noticed a man standing outside my patio door and looking in. I didn't know who he was and had never seen him before. I ducked down behind the counter. When I looked up again several moments later, he was gone. I realized that he must be the guy who left me the Valentine. But I had never noticed him before. It made me wonder if he had been watching my apartment windows previously, but I just didn't notice. I hoped not. It was possible that he just saw me leaving to go to work or whenever, because there were numerous apartments that looked out to the parking lot where my car was. Either way, somebody here was being as creepy as they could possibly be. I thought about calling the police or reporting him, but I didn't even have a good description of the guy. I only saw him for a second, and he was outside, so it wasn't very clear. He appeared to be a Caucasian male, about 6 feet tall, with darkish-colored hair. I sent an email to apartment management, letting them know what happened. I didn't know what could be done about it, though. For the rest of that night, everything was mostly fine. I had shut my curtains, obviously, and was getting ready for bed. But around 11 p.m., I thought I heard the sound of my doorknob turning. I was in my bedroom, so I didn't hear it clearly. I stopped what I was doing and listened, and I heard a knock on the door. My heart started racing as soon as I heard it. I knew who it likely was. I grabbed my phone and was ready to call the police. Then I quietly walked over to my door. I looked through the peephole, and when I did, I saw a man who certainly resembled the guy at my window. I called the police right then and there. Then I moved back into my bedroom to talk with them and explain the situation. About a minute later, the guy knocked again. This was followed by another knock about a minute after that. The police were on their way, and I hoped they would get there fast. The man knocked once more, but this time I heard him yelling for help. I remember him asking if anybody was home and if they could please come to the door because he needed help. I knew this was probably just his desperate attempt to try to get me to open the door for him. After that, I didn't hear anything for a while. I assumed that he left, but he didn't. He stayed there until the police arrived several minutes later. They spoke with the man and me as well. I was really glad the guy didn't run away. The man did not get arrested, but he did end up getting evicted from the apartment building. He was also trespassed and not allowed to come back. Since that night, I haven't seen him. For a little background, I'm female, and this took place when I was in high school. It was my sophomore year, and I would describe myself as a pretty average student. I had a good group of friends that I would talk to at school and hang out with sometimes. At the time this took place, I was not dating anybody. When Valentine's Day came, it was just another day to me. At my school, you could buy someone a rose, which would then be delivered to whoever you wanted during study hall by teachers' aides. It was popular for guys at the school to get their girlfriends a rose. So on Valentine's Day that year, I obviously wasn't expecting one. In study hall, I was in Spanish class and just doing homework when I noticed a student enter the room holding several roses. She mentioned some names of other girls who raised their hands, and she gave them their roses. Then she said my name, and I was really surprised. I raised my hand, and she gave me one of the roses. I had no idea who had gotten me a rose, though. One of my friends who was in the class asked me who it was from, and I told her I didn't know. We started talking, thinking about who could have done it. I really wasn't aware of any guys who would do that. I sort of had a crush on this one guy who was on the football team, and we talked here and there, so I was kind of hoping it was from him. But I didn't really think so, as we weren't that close yet or anything. As the day went on, I was trying to figure out who sent me the rose, but I really had no answers. I talked with a few more of my friends, but none of them seemed to know anything either. Finally, I had my last class of the day, which was science. When it was over, I went back to my locker to get my things and go home. As I arrived at my locker, I saw that there was a note attached to it. I took it out and read it. The note said, "I see that you got the rose I sent you. I hope you like it." The handwriting was kind of sloppy, but it didn't give me any clues as to who left it. I looked around the crowded hallway but still didn't have an answer. So I got my things and then left to walk home. At that time, I walked to school and back because I didn't have my license yet, and we lived really close to the school. I would only take a few sidewalks the entire way, and it took me maybe 15 minutes to walk back most days. On that very same day, as I was walking home from school, I saw this guy walking behind me. It was kind of hard to tell, because he was a really long way back. I couldn't hear him walking or anything. I don't even know why I looked behind me, but at one point, I think about halfway back, I did look behind. Normally when I walked home from school, I was all by myself. So when I noticed the guy, it was a little bit unusual, but I still didn't think too much of it. He was this one guy who did go to my school, but I didn't know his name or anything. I just recognized him. He wasn't in my grade and was really tall, with curly blonde hair and glasses. I walked the rest of the way home, and as I was going up my driveway, I looked to the left and saw him. He was still a really long way back, walking down the sidewalk towards me. I didn't know that he lived in my neighborhood, and I had never seen him walking before. It was kind of odd. I went inside my house and then went into my bedroom to finish my homework. I remember that as I was in there, probably about 15 minutes later, there was a knock on the front door. I was home by myself because my parents were both still at work. I got up, left my bedroom, and went to the front door, but by the time I got there, whoever had knocked was gone. I looked around and didn't see anybody at all. Then I just went back to my bedroom. It was really strange. A couple of hours later, my parents got home from work. I remember that my mom came into my room and dropped an envelope on my desk. She said it was on the front step when they got home, and my name was on it. I was even more confused now. I opened it up and read it. It was from the same person who sent the rose to me and left the note on my locker. The letter said that he saw that I got the rose and letter and wanted to meet me before school at 7:30 a.m. the next day. I was supposed to go to the back parking lot. I knew there was a pretty good chance it was the guy who followed me home. I found it creepy that he was being all mysterious, and I had never talked to him before. I didn't find him attractive at all either. I decided to go just to tell him that I appreciated the rose but was not interested, and he didn't have to follow me home. Normally, I would get to school at about 7:30 a.m. anyways, and school started at 7:50 a.m. When I got there, I went into the back parking lot. This parking lot was pretty quiet and just overflow from the main other two lots. It was mostly used for football games or other sports, and only a few kids would park their cars there for school. When I got there, there were a couple of cars parked around, but nobody was in the parking lot that I noticed. Then I saw a door open on one of the cars, and the same guy who followed me home came out. I knew it would be him. He walked over to me and said hi, and told me his name was James. He was the one who sent me the rose. I told him I knew that because he followed me home. He said he did that just because he wanted to leave me the letter. Before I had a chance to say anything, he told me that we should talk inside his car. I didn't want to because I didn't want to spend any more time there. I said no thanks, that I had to get to class, and I started to tell him that I really wasn't interested. When I said that, though, he told me I should go in his car again. He said I should just hang out with him today, and he knew that I would have a good time. Then he said we should skip school and drive someplace. I said no, and started walking back. That's when he started to follow me, and I looked to see him walking quickly in my direction. I just started running at that point towards the school. He actually started to chase after me, running at full speed. But then he stopped shortly after I had made it far enough away that someone in the main parking lot would have seen him chasing me. I was able to get back to school after that. I hoped that I would never see him again. I remember that over the next few days, he sent me a few messages on social media, calling me names and stuff. But I just blocked him on everything. After that, I hardly ever saw him again. He was a senior that year, and I guess he skipped school a lot anyway. That was the craziest Valentine's Day I've ever had. This happened on Valentine's Day last year. I was going out to a restaurant with my girlfriend, Veronica. The restaurant was pretty nice, but not too fancy. It was a big place, and when we got there, it was also very busy. Luckily, we were able to get a table and had our Valentine's date. Now, fast forward to maybe an hour later. We were just sitting there talking. I had already paid, so we were about to leave soon, but we're still enjoying our conversation. I had to use the restroom, so I got up and said I would be right back. Veronica stayed at the table. I walked to the back of the place and was in the restroom for less than a minute. When I returned to the table, Veronica was gone. I assumed at first that she went to the restroom as well. I sat back down and waited for her to return. Then I felt my phone vibrate with a text. I looked at it and saw it was from Veronica, saying that some crazy guy was after her. I didn't know what she meant, so I asked her what she was talking about. She responded, saying that she was in the parking lot. I was very confused, but decided to go out and find Veronica. The restaurant was still very busy, with people all over the place. I walked out into the parking lot. There were cars parked everywhere, and on the sides of the parking lot were some grassy areas with a few bushes and trees. After leaving the restaurant, I didn't immediately see anyone else. I stood in the middle of the parking lot and texted Veronica again, asking where she was. I told her I was now in the parking lot. She told me she was behind a bush and to be careful. As I looked around for her, I called out her name. Then I saw her. She was looking out from behind a bush at me. But just seconds later, somebody hit me. I had no idea what happened. The next thing I knew, I was on the ground. I saw a guy next to me and realized he had tackled me. He started to get up, and I grabbed him, trying to wrestle him to the ground. We struggled for a few moments, and in the struggle, I managed to land a good punch to his face. Veronica had now walked over to us. When I got up, we both ran to the car. The guy wasn't knocked out or anything and got up shortly after, chasing after us moments later. We managed to get inside my car just in time before he reached it and tried opening the door. When the door didn't work, he started banging on the windows. I quickly drove away, with him hitting my car until he couldn't anymore. It all happened so fast. It felt like less than a minute, but in reality, I think it was like 2 or 3 minutes. After we left, we called the police and reported the whole thing. We went back and talked to officers, and the man had run away but was located in a nearby parking lot. I was fine with just minor scrapes and scratches. Veronica told me that she had noticed the guy earlier in the restaurant, sitting sorta behind me. She noticed him looking at her once or twice, but didn't think too much of it. When I left to go to the restroom, he apparently got up and walked right over to her. He asked her to come and sit with him, and when she said no, he tried to grab her arm. She then got up and left the restaurant, planning to go out to the car and not thinking the guy would follow her. But she realized when she got out that I had the keys and noticed the man leaving the restaurant too. She then ran out of his sight and hid behind a bush. The guy was walking around the parking lot looking for her when I left. He obviously knew I was her boyfriend and attacked me. I didn't know any of this until afterward. It still blows my mind when I think back to it, and I'm really glad that Veronica and I were okay and that the man was caught. A few years back, I had my girlfriend Amanda over at my apartment for Valentine's Day. I cooked us some food, which is a hobby of mine. Afterwards, we started watching a movie. We were both on the couch, and about halfway through the movie, at around 9 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. It was really strange, because I didn't know why anybody would be there. It was sort of late, and no one had ever knocked on my door before. I got up and looked, but no one was there. I opened the door and looked down the hallway, but I still saw no one. It was really weird. I figured that maybe somebody was at the wrong apartment or something. I told Amanda that no one was there and then went back to the couch. We unpaused the movie and continued watching. About 10 minutes later, suddenly, my TV just turned off. It was very strange. I found the remote and knew that neither of us had touched it. I turned the TV back on after that. By now, we were both really creeped out by what was going on. Maybe 20 minutes went by, and everything seemed to be returning to normal. Then, there were 2 really loud bangs at my door. Once more, I got up and this time ran to the door. I looked out and saw nothing. When I opened the door and looked down the hallway, I did see someone just barely. I saw a guy going around the corner to the stairs and elevator area. I actually ran over there. When I reached the corner, he had gone down the stairs, and I couldn't see him. I figured I better not chase after this person anymore, so I went back to my apartment. I told Amanda that I saw the guy, but he got away. After that, we just waited for more strange things to happen. Luckily, nothing else weird happened, and nothing like that ever happened again. I don't live in that apartment anymore. Looking back, I think whoever it was had the same kind of remote that works with my TV. My place was small, so they probably just held it up to the door. I still don't know who it was or why they did that. I didn't get a good look at the person either. I only saw him for a split second and never saw his face. This remains one of my creepiest experiences.